It always starts the same, not with love, with projection. She doesn't see you. She sees a possibility, a shape, a silhouette she can mold. And for a moment, you confuse her eyes for intimacy. But look again. That's not affection. It's calculation. You're not being seen. You're being scanned, measured, compared. Like a blank canvas waiting to be filled. But the masterpiece she paints was never about you. You're just the frame. And Carl Jung, he warned you, not with soft words, but with the precision of a man who spent his life staring into the unconscious. He mapped the hidden machinery beneath the surface of love. And what he found still cuts deep. Women don't fall in love with men. They fall in love with the idea of men, with fantasies, with projections. And the darkest part? They don't even know they're doing it. You think you've been chosen, but what's actually been chosen is a role, a part, in a film you didn't write. You're not her partner. You're her projection, a psychological puppet dancing to the rhythm of her unmet needs. Her need for control, for safety, for redemption. Jung called this force the Animus, the inner masculine spirit within every woman. When it's wounded, undeveloped, or inflated, it becomes a tyrant. It blinds her. It drives her. She argues without reason, controls without wisdom, moralizes without shame. Because it's not her speaking anymore. It's the voice of the Animus, speaking through her, possessing her. And you mistake it for love, because no one ever told you desire is not the same as intimacy. Being chosen is not the same as being understood. She said you were different, but you were just another mask, another actor in a script she's rehearsed for years. And when your truth starts breaking through the fantasy, when you stop fitting the part, she doesn't rewrite the story. She changes the actor. You're left confused, rejected, ashamed. Not because you failed, but because you stopped playing the role. Carl Jung warned, there's only one way out of this psychological theater: individuation, the brutal, lifelong process of becoming whole within yourself. And here's the truth most men will never face. They don't want wholeness. They want validation. You've been trained to chase approval, to perform for affection, to let women define your worth. And as long as you do that, you'll keep playing the same role, over and over, until the spotlight shifts and you're replaced. Individuation isn't glamorous. It's not self-care. It's not morning routines. It's war. With the parts of yourself you've buried, the insecure, the ashamed, the broken. It demands that you stop blaming her for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. Because here's what Jung understood. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. You don't earn your value through her affection. You claim it by standing alone, fully awake, fully responsible, fully alive. A man who has faced his own unconscious cannot be seduced by projection. He sees through it. He doesn't dance for love. He doesn't beg for visibility. He doesn't shrink to fit inside someone else's fantasy. Because he's no longer an actor. He's the author. Jung called it the great tragedy of modern men. Not that they're rejected, but that they volunteer for rejection. They mold themselves like wet clay into whatever shape they think will be accepted. You call it love. You call it compromise. You call it partnership. But Jung had another name for it: self-betrayal. He warned that men who abandon their inner growth become slaves to the feminine projection. They bend, they contort, they perform for women who don't even know their own true desire. And slowly, you stop being a man. You become a mask, smiling, nodding, agreeing. Until one day, you can't remember who you were before you put the mask on. And women, they feel it. Oh yes, they sense it more than you could ever understand. The very traits you believe will make her stay, obedience, availability, emotional exposure without boundaries, are the same traits that make you invisible, disposable, replaceable. Why? Because the feminine is not drawn to comfort. It's drawn to depth, to danger, to the unknown, to the man she can't quite define and can never fully control. Here's the paradox that keeps most men enslaved. You fear being alone more than you fear being fake. You'd rather lose yourself than lose her. You'd rather perform a role than face the silence that comes without applause. But Jung made it clear, until a man embraces solitude, he will never be free. He wrote that individuation demands everything. It asks you to die before you die, to let every false self burn so something real can finally emerge. And here's the part no one dares to say out loud. Individuation is lonely, terrifyingly lonely. Because as you walk that path, you begin to see what others refuse to see. You see the games, the masks, the lies people tell themselves just to feel safe. And when you speak that truth aloud, they recoil. They call you cold, detached, too serious. They say you're the problem. But you're not the problem. You're the mirror. And people, they hate the mirror when it shows them what they're desperate to avoid. Jung knew this well. He studied patients who were paralyzed by their own shadow, that dark, rejected part of the psyche, the one they spent a lifetime denying. And women? Jung warned that many are raised in cultures that reward them for avoiding that shadow altogether. They're told they're pure, emotional, intuitive, complete, just as they are. But Jung didn't believe that fantasy. He wrote that the greatest danger to the feminine psyche is the unconscious animus, that inner masculine voice that speaks with false certainty, false authority, and false moral superiority. And if a woman never faces this animus, if she never integrates it, she becomes possessed by it. She doesn't recognize her projections. She can't own her rage. She turns every man into the villain of a war she refuses to fight within herself. And you thought you could save her. Be the exception. Be the one she finally sees. You thought, if I love her hard enough, if I prove myself, if I perform well enough, she'll choose me for me. But that's not how projection works. Projection is a thief. It doesn't care who you are. It only cares who you represent. It steals reality and replaces it with a script. And unless both men and women awaken from that illusion, they will repeat the same tragedy, over and over again, each blaming the other, each haunted by shadows they refuse to name. Here's the most bitter twist of all. The woman who once saw you as her savior will one day see you as her enemy. Not because you changed, but because you failed to fulfill the fantasy she projected onto you. And she won't even realize she's doing it. Jung called this betrayal inevitable, when neither person takes responsibility for their own inner world. You didn't lie to her. You didn't cheat. You didn't deceive. You simply failed to become the man she invented in the silence of her unconscious. You were never him. You never could be. And that's why she resents you, not for your flaws, but for falling short of a role you were never told you were playing. She wasn't loving you. She was loving an illusion. And when the illusion cracked, the blame fell on you. Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Nowhere is that more true than in love. Most relationships aren't unions of two whole beings. They're collisions of projections, of unmet needs, of buried childhood wounds masquerading as passion. You call it chemistry. You call it fate. But Jung had another word for it: possession. And like a man under a spell, you keep walking into the fire, convinced that this time will be different. But it won't, because you haven't asked yourself the one question that could change everything. What if I'm responsible for this pattern? It's easier to blame her, to call her manipulative, cold, dishonest. But Jung would look you in the eye and ask, why did you allow yourself to be chosen by a woman like that? Because here's the truth. The man who refuses to confront his own feminine unconscious will become a servant to hers. You are not a victim. You are a volunteer. You chose the role. You chose the script. You chose to be the fool in her myth, because facing your own emptiness felt more terrifying than being used. Because pretending to be loved felt safer than being truly alone. But here's the cost. When you trade truth for fantasy, you don't just lose her, you lose yourself. This is where most of you will stop listening, because this is where the comfort ends and the responsibility begins. Jung didn't hand out shortcuts. He didn't sell formulas. He didn't promise greatness. He offered something far more dangerous: the lifelong task of self-confrontation, of sitting alone in the silence of your own mind until the illusions begin to crack, until that voice inside you, the one that whispers you're nothing without her, begins to die. And make no mistake, that voice will fight hard. It will scream that you need her, that you are incomplete without her, that no man can survive without feminine validation. But Jung's work, it whispers something more radical. It whispers this: the man who can stand without her, without approval, without attention, without being needed, is the man who is finally free. Free from projection, free from performance, free from the prison of being someone else's idea of a man. And when you reach that place, you don't become cold. You don't become distant. You become real, rooted, grounded, fully alive in your own skin. And here's the paradox. That's when women will be most drawn to you. Not because you need them, but because you don't. And when they come closer, you won't flinch. You won't perform. You'll simply smile. Not out of arrogance, not out of spite, but because you finally understand. You understand that she's on her own path, that she has her own animus to face, her own illusions to break. And you can't do that work for her. You can't save her from herself. All you can do is what Jung did. Walk your path so fearlessly that you become a living mirror, reflecting truth to anyone brave enough to look. Most will turn away, but a few, a rare few, will thank you for it. And that is the difference between being loved for the role you play and being respected for the man you've become. And then it happens. That moment when you finally realize you don't have to perform anymore. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to shape-shift for approval. And something strange begins to happen. People around you grow uncomfortable. They can't explain it, but they feel it. The weight of your presence unsettles them because you no longer fit into the boxes that made them feel safe. Jung warned us, the individuated man is not celebrated. He is feared, labeled, misunderstood. They'll say you're distant, arrogant, too serious, too cold. But the truth is simpler and more dangerous. You've become untouchable, unbuyable, unmanipulable, because you see through the game. And now it gets almost comical. The very people who once begged for your attention, your validation, your approval, begin to resent you for no longer needing theirs. Especially women, still possessed by the fantasy of the perfect man. They'll say you're emotionally unavailable, too logical, too analytical. But what they really mean is this: they can no longer control you. You've stepped off the stage. You've stopped reading their script, and without a script, they don't know what to do with you. Because you've stopped being a character. You've started being a man. Jung once joked, the gods have become diseases. What ancient cultures called possession, we now call neurosis. And in that sense, men chasing female validation are among the most spiritually sick. You think it's romantic when you say, I'd do anything for her, she's my everything. But Jung would look at you and say, that's not love, that's abandonment of self. Because when you hand your soul to a woman, your hope, your meaning, your purpose, you've made her carry a burden she was never designed to hold. And eventually, she will drop it. She must, because no woman, no matter how loving, can carry the weight of a man who refuses to carry himself. And when she drops it, you'll feel betrayed. But you shouldn't. You should thank her. Because in that moment, when the illusion collapses, you are finally face to face with the truth. The work of becoming a man was never hers to do. It was always yours. And then comes that moment of brutal clarity. And you only have two choices. You can blame her, you can become bitter, you can join the angry chorus of men pointing fingers, mocking women, swearing them off like cowards who never had the courage to face their own emptiness. Or you can do what Jung would have demanded. You can turn inward. You can walk the terrifying, lonely, liberating path of individuation, of becoming whole, without needing anyone to complete you. Because the truth is simple and unbearable for most. The woman you keep searching for out there is the reflection of the part of yourself you've abandoned. Until you face that part, every relationship will be a lie, a performance, a negotiation. But when you finally face it, when you integrate your own inner feminine, you stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop seducing, you stand, still, rooted, undeniable. And from that place, something begins to shift. You no longer attract women who want a character. You attract women who want the truth. And you'll know it when it happens. Because she won't demand performance. She won't try to rewrite your script. She won't love your potential. She'll meet you as she is. No mask, no projection, no game. She won't see you as a savior. She won't ask you to carry her soul, because she's already learned to carry her own. She's met her shadow. She's faced her animus. She's burned her illusions. And when she stands before you, it won't be desperate. It won't be incomplete. It will be true. And that kind of love, Jung said, is the rarest and most dangerous of all. It asks for nothing. It offers everything. Not because it needs, but because it chooses. And most of you, you won't get there. you'll settle for the fantasy, for the applause, for the illusion of being loved for someone you are not, because facing who you truly are still feels like too much. But if you have the courage, the ruthless, soul-splitting courage to keep going, to keep walking alone, to burn every false identity you've ever used to earn affection, you will find yourself standing on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. You will find you. And in that moment, women will no longer be your mirror. They will no longer be your source. They will become what they were always meant to be: partners, not prizes; mirrors, not mothers; allies, not saviors. And you will love them, not to be validated, but because you want to, from a place of power, from a place of truth, from a place that no longer asks permission to exist. Jung didn't give you a map. He gave you a warning. Every man who refuses to confront himself will live as a slave to the projections of others, especially the projections of women. But he also left you a challenge to choose yourself relentlessly, unapologetically, because the man who chooses himself cannot be controlled by fantasy, cannot be seduced by performance, cannot be reduced to a role. He becomes the author of his own life. And if you've made it this far, if something in this message cut through the illusion, don't just scroll away. Like this video. Share it with the man who's still asleep. Subscribe if you're ready to wake up. Not for us, for him. The man still performing, still waiting to be chosen, still hoping she'll fix what he refuses to face. Let's wake him up, one man at a time.